the month of May, we explored the themes encompassing one general theme, which was a whole new world, a whole new world. And boy, we've had some opportunities to change some things this month within ourselves. You know, early on in the first week, we explored the theme of time to wake up, time to wake up. And most of the thing is, what does this mean? Was what we looked at was, what does this mean? Life on Earth is inseparable from human consciousness. Another way to say that is, as within, so without. There are people who believe, and I'm not one of them, that the universe is waiting for us to tell it what to do. Nope. The universe is not waiting for us to tell it what to do. The universe does as we believe and as what we put into motion. So to make an effective change in the world, be the change you wish to see in the world, was Gandhi. And also, you know, that change starts within, which is mostly what week 2 was about. Reverend Christie took us through a beautiful exploration of chaos and higher order, chaos and reordering at a higher level of functioning. She used the beautiful example of the transformation between the caterpillar to the butterfly. And what happens in the chrysalis? Nobody knows. You know, science is interested in the how, but mystics and those of a spiritually evolved consciousness are more interested in the now, not the how. That's one of my sayings. It's like, be more interested in the now than the how, and you'll know how to create the how by living each now. You create the how because you create the way. So again, it's this heart of the mystic. It's living in the mystery. We cannot know how some things work. Even the caterpillar doesn't know it. There was this great funny joke David shared with us, and it was, there are 2 caterpillars kind of inching along a branch, and just as they're making their way, maybe they're chomping on some leaves or something like that, this beautiful butterfly comes flying across. And one caterpillar looks at the other caterpillar and says, "You are never going to get me up in one of those." So they don't know how it happens either. They don't know that's their destiny, is to become that butterfly. How can we know that in form? How can we know that that formless energy is the one that's guiding us through these periods of chaos? Right now, I'd say we're living in a bit of chaos. You know, it's time to wake up. So waking up, recognizing. So one of the ways to get to the deepest acceptance, which is what we're going to talk about today, is the deepest acceptance is to be fully in alignment with what is happening right now. This is the deepest acceptance, is to be able to be with what is and be fully aligned with it and incorporate what is coming in the moment. So, you know, for example, when Peter Alexander asked Donald Trump, the reporter Peter Alexander asked Donald Trump, you know, what do you say to the American public who's afraid? And Donald Trump's response was, "That's a stupid question." You know what? It's not a stupid question. It's not a stupid question. And I want to suggest also, I want to invite you into the fear. Be present with what is, in order to operate from pure love. I like to say that's first nature. Some people say when that becomes second nature, you got it. No, I think it's when it becomes first nature, you got it. And our first nature is love. So in the face of this fear, as loving as we can be, you know, psychologists like to refer to it as peeling back the levels and the layers of an onion. All those things that have covered up our pure and beautiful hearts, and the awareness that we are one human race. It's not multiple races. It is one human race. And Erika Luckett said it best. I believe in kindness, right? In our song, Kindness. Despite the troubles we face, because I believe in the human race. We know how to get it right when we can stay in alignment. But to be present with what is means, what are you afraid of? We are in a global pandemic. In the meantime, here we are, right? There's a lot of suppression and fear. But then there's also fear of each other. When we don't understand each other, intellectual understanding, or when we are given false information about one another, it's easy to create fear and separation when the heart of the mystic, the truth of who you are, your first nature, your true nature is to live from the soul. The calling of the soul is to oneness. Fall into the heart's wisdom. And as Rumi would say, discover the things that you have built up against love, those obstacles that you have built up against love, and peel it all back. Because the deepest level of love is accessible to us. We can only act at the deepest level of love we have accessed by the removal of the fear that has been laid over top of it. We have a say in what happens. We are not, automatons to be directed and told what to do all the time. 1 Corinthians 13 says, when I was a child, my speech, feelings, and thinking were all those of a child. Now that I'm an adult, I put away childish ways. Childish ways are ways that make you believe that someone else needs to tell you what to do. Everyone is our spiritual teacher. Whether you have a philosophy or you've written a book or not, everything around us is our teacher. Everything around us is our teacher. And when we stay in alignment with the infinite source of love, the divine, God, source, creation, whatever you want to call that power, that force, it's amazing what happens. And what's ours to do just shows up right in front of you. The more I can allow my soul's calling to express through my senses, the more I am in alignment. Maybe the deepest level of acceptance is to be accepting responsibility for my own actions, or accepting responsibility for my non-actions. Think about that for a minute. What are we afraid of? It's a good question. To pretend that we're not afraid when we are is not helpful, and it doesn't really evolve our consciousness any. It's ignoring. It's like turning away from the thing. Something's happening right in front of you, let's say a violent situation. I think we've gotten to the point in our human existence where to look the other way is the same way, because it's happened all around us so many times. There is no there is no other way. It's all around. Same with the global pandemic. You can't look away from it and say, I'm going to go to Canada, or I'm going to go to, Switzerland or Italy or someplace like that. You can't you can't look away from. That's the equanimity of it, to be able to look with equanimity on all things that are happening and recognize that you can bring your love and light to it. We can transform the moment by staying present in alignment. How do we do that? Awakened doing and a deeper acceptance of what is ours to do. And you'll know it when it's right in front of you. And you'll act with love. For example, last week, quite personally, on the same day George Floyd's life was taken, I was in my house working, and I have an African-American gentleman who mows the lawn. He's a landscaper and a groundskeeper, does amazing work. Pulls up to the front of my house, as anyone else had prior to this gentleman taking over the job, and he started to work in the yard. And all of a sudden I became really unsettled for no reason. Yeah, there was no reason. There was lots of reason. It was intuition. I couldn't see outside from where I was, but I felt compelled to get up and look out the front window, which I did. And to my surprise, there's a police officer in my driveway. My instinct, my first nature kicks in when things like this happen and I'm around. I move into action. I move as love in action immediately. I don't think it's a response now. It's just a reaction, is to move in love. And I put my shoes on and stepped outside into the driveway as quickly as I could. And I approached the officer and I said, "Excuse me, is there a problem?" To which the officer responded, "You're not allowed to park on this side of the street." And I said, "Well, he's here providing a service, and others before him have done the exact same thing." And when our eyes met, my eyes met the police officer's eyes, I could see that he was as weary of this kind of stuff as I was. He didn't want to be there on that. There were so many other things going on. This, really? It was, refreshing would be too strong of a word, but it was nice to see that we were on the same page of, really, he had to come out and do this because when somebody calls, they have to show up. So I asked my groundskeeper to put the car into the driveway, which he did, and he went about his work. And I went out and just checked on him later. I'm like, are you okay? And he apologized for creating drama in the neighborhood. I said, no, there's nothing to apologize for. But see, that was mine to do. Minor, it doesn't even look like I did anything, but I kind of did. I didn't know what the officer was like. I didn't know what was going to happen. All I knew was love can heal this, and silence. This is not the time to be silent about these kinds of things. I used to love to watch the Olympics, and I still do sometimes, but in particular, I loved the high divers and the gymnasts. And I always remember watching their, the uneven parallel bars and also the balance beam. And I can always remember them saying, it's important that they stick the ending. The same with the ice skaters, getting up there doing a triple axel or something like this and landing it, nailing the landing. You got to stick the landing.
A double twist, stuck the landing.
And that's
what a metaphor for life and spiritual practice. What is ours to do? What are the tools of engagement? We have rules of engagement with the earth and the planet, but what are the tools of engagement? So to become an Olympic athlete, you can only imagine how many hours and days and weeks and months and years, how much sacrifice it takes to become a world-class athlete. So they practice spiritual practice. And then they get to the day where it all comes together and where it matters. All of a sudden, all this practice matters, but all of a sudden they're going to be, I don't want to say judged, but you're going to be put into a competition where you're going to summon forth all of those years of practice, all of the tools of engagement, the spiritual practice. And now it's time for you to stick the ending, land it, to nail the ending. What if nailing the landing? So they go through their routine and their flips and their turns and their all of those things. What if all those flips and turns is the spiritual practice and the routine? Well, what if nailing the landing is actually putting it into action when this thing comes in front of you to do? What if nailing the landing is being first nature instead of second nature? Meaning your reaction is, no matter what happens in the middle, when it shows up in front of me, bam, I stick the landing, meaning I show up as love in action. I show up as love in action, and I'm not quiet, not mean. I do the thing that love compels me to do. So it's a way of, when Reverend Christy was talking about the transformation through chaos in week 2 of May, I pointed out that the caterpillar, the first thing that happens is its head gets disengaged from its body, meaning stop thinking so much. We're not going to think. Mind is so small. Mind is small, and you can operate, through the mind. In the field of mind, you can materialize, a parking spot and all that kind of stuff, which is great when you really need one. But operating in tandem, like in full connection with Source, is what the deepest level of acceptance is that we as human beings are called to do, is to recognize that we are in control of our actions. We are in control of our non-action. Ours is to accept that we are ageless, we are timeless, we are spaceless, we are beyond body, thought, and utterance. We are the soul that powers all of that. If you've ever had the privilege of being with someone when they transition from human form back into the energetic realms, you'll notice quickly, it's not lost on anyone, that our souls are encased in a body that stops animating once that life force is gone. So we are not this body. However, our soul is in it. So in this triune nature, it's kind of like the difficulty factor when you talk about the high divers and the gymnasts with these routines. Not only are they watching what they're doing, with the certain flips and the certain how many times they flip in before they hit the water, there's the difficulty factor. How difficult is that thing to do? It's easier than just diving swan dive right down into the water. It's so beautiful. The difficulty factor is in there. In human form, there's a difficulty factor, you know, disengaging the ego and putting the ego in service to the soul. You'll hear me say this over and over again. It was the most valuable lesson I got. I had this awareness as a child that that's what I was doing all the time. I was this being who operates directly from source, going around being love in action. I didn't know those words exactly, but I listened. And from the time I was in elementary school, you know, we've all had the experience of teachers who just weren't, you know, I don't know, maybe they're having a bad day or something like that. But I was always the one that would stick up for the other kids. You know, I could see energy around people. So if a teacher yelled at a kid in 3rd grade, I jumped up from my desk and ran over to the child and I said, you don't have to listen to her when she talks to you like that. To which, to the astonishment of the 3rd grade teacher, sent me right to the office, and indignantly I said, I am going to the office because I don't like what's going on around here. And I kind of stepped out and marched down the hallway and sat in the office. I just could not wait to tell on the teacher. And fortunately for me, this is what I mean, I was divinely guided, because I could have gotten in a lot of trouble for that. But instead, the principal thought it was very funny that I was so upset by this. And so we had a conversation, and he convinced me to get back into the classroom. Well, we moved my desk so that something like this, the next time it occurred, I would just be able to leave the class without disrupting it and just come and tell him right away. He got a kick out of it. My parents didn't get such a kick out of it, but you know, they were familiar with my ways. Why am I saying this? It was the deepest acceptance that I could muster at that point. It was my love in action at that point. The deepest level of acceptance was I was seeing something in front of me that was not okay. It felt violent. It felt cruel and hurtful. And I could see the egg of this human get smashed, you know, and it just took me aback. There's this breathing quality when we participate with soul and spirit as individuals. It's mirrored all around in nature. You know, horticulturists will tell you if we're not growing, we're dying. If we're not growing, we're dying. If a plant is not growing, it's dying. Not like a corporation, actually. They try to mimic that, but that's not exactly how that goes. That's a story for another time. But all living things that have heartbeats are diastolic and systolic rhythms of the heart. The oceans, the waves, the tides, they come in and they go out. So there's this ebb and flow to our awakening. We aren't separate. We aren't separate from each other. There's one human race. You know, this is a very fragile time in the evolution of the consciousness of the planet. We must awaken. The deepest level of acceptance is what is ours to do to awaken the consciousness. And be careful navigating at this time. You know, we're only capable of operating, again, at the level of love that we've uncovered for ourselves. So if what is ours to do right now is to take the opportunity to reflect on your inner life. What is keeping you from the loving action? You know, when we see people taking each other's lives, it's fear all around. It's fear of other, or fear that I don't have enough, or it's something that has been splashed onto our consciousness for such a long time. It's difficult for some to see another way, but love can help with our seeing. More than anything else, the most powerful force on the planet is love. And it's not a passive force. It's quite powerful. Invite love into your heart every day. Just take that into meditation and to become filled to overflowing with love. Let's get this spiritual practice of filling our hearts to overflowing, likening it to a glass of water that has dirt in the bottom of it. Maybe it's just sat there and somebody comes and stirs it up a little bit. If you fill that glass with more clear water, eventually all of the sediments just come right out and overflow. We get filled to overflowing with love. So remember that your first nature is love. You know, we can't see where we're going sometimes. You know, I remember living in the Bay Area when crossing the Bay Bridge in the morning, there'd be dense fog and you can't see past your headlights when it's like that. But there's this trust, this taking that step in faith and trust and knowing. It was similar to knowing that even though I couldn't see beyond my headlights, I trusted that the rest of the bridge was still there. That's faith. Faith in things not yet seen, and the trust and the courage to take the step. The courage to take that step into the deepest acceptance, which is to live by the soul. And you can't always see where you're going, but you just have to know that as you take the next step, the horizon comes to greet you. So until we accept what is, it's difficult to become effective in making changes. Accepting what is means seeing things as they truly are and not candy coating it. It's difficult to see things as they are right now, and it might be scary. But examine what it is that you're afraid of most. Are you afraid mostly of, I ask myself, am I more afraid of taking the step into what is mine to do? Or am I afraid of something else? It's not really there. You know, everything around us is our teacher. May my action become love in action.